So good afternoon. I think we got a very interesting panel. The topic itself was 7 cents. And I was, I'm going to let my panelists judge what the 7 cents title meant. But let's start with you, Ajay. At Qualcomm, you all build some of the components that drive the IoT world. You'll certainly build a lot of components that drive the smart world, right? The smart devices around us. What's your view of IoT? Where's it headed from the Qualcomm perspective?
Right now, can you guys hear me? Right now, Qualcomm actually is looking at the IoT world in the sense of an emerging market. The strategy from a big semiconductor supplier point of view is essentially about how do we bring the new technologies into the IoT devices where we are talking about very cheap edge devices. So as you know, Qualcomm is not in the data center business, which is where most of the topics are geared towards in this conference. If we have to succeed in the IoT market, we have to bring value to the edge devices or the data aggregators in the middle. Connectivity piece is sworn up as far as Qualcomm is concerned. We are the largest 4G supplier, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth supplier in the world. So that's not an issue. The question is, if we make dumb edge devices, will it sustain our semiconductor business? The R&D costs of putting out even a small chip are prohibitively expensive to sell it out at 3 cents, 5 cents, 60 cents. That's what the component costs are in the edge devices. So that's the idea, therefore, from Qualcomm point of view is to bring intelligence to the edge devices. Okay. So the idea from Qualcomm point of view is to bring intelligence, which means essentially computing to the edge devices, which will enable businesses which we don't think about right now. We seem to be talking connected services, but the major reason for the smartphone to be successful was that it provided services to you, which means that if the IoT devices do not provide services to you, and you have to go out and connect yourself to some data service, it's still good business for us, 4G connectivity, but that will become stagnant. Market will not like it from Qualcomm point of view. It won't reward us. So therefore, the idea is to bring intelligence to the edge devices, A. B, bring the cost of the platform of the edge devices down by integrating components. We are the only company probably in the world which has every technology piece in one way or the other in-house. So to give you an example, the latest, you might have guys have heard of the Snapdragon platform, which is a drone platform. Before we got into that business, the drone guys, the Patriots and the DJIs, the drones had 7 different boards on them. And we brought them on to one board, which essentially means that their margins improve, of course, brings business to us. So the strategy is that hit the vertical markets differently. So the edge devices can be many things, but hit them differently, bring the integration of components and bring intelligence to the edge devices, which will spawn off different industries, essentially. Thank you.
Got it. So, sounds like you're still a little skeptical of where this is headed in terms of, is it a fat device at the edge? Is it more intelligent? Is connectivity the key? I guess those are your strengths, but would love to dive deeper on the whole trend of SoC,
sure.
The price points that are driving IoT, right?
Sure.
So, Viren, what do you all see at Huawei? What is the trend in terms of IoT?
So I think IoT, if you look at...
Fine back there?
Can you hear?
No, then let's pass the mic on.
So I think IoT, if you look at IoT systems broadly, the IoT system architectures can be divided in 4 layers. We have devices at the edge, then we have gateway, and then we have IoT platforms and applications. Now here in these 4 layers, of course from Huawei perspective, Huawei have solutions, the whole IoT solutions for different use cases. For example, for a smart home, for connected cars, for smart parking, or smart lighting, or a smart city, and even for smart manufacturing. I think the trend what we see today in IoT solutions or systems is that how you can give better user experience. So more and more optimization at different layers from the user perspective. That is one trend we can see. So I think the philosophy here more is that instead of supply driven, you be demand driven. Means what is the requirement of the application, and in that application, what can make user experience better. I think that is, there is a focus on that. So to give you one example, for example, now when we control devices in IoT or in a smart home setting, so latency becomes very important. The moment you click on your mobile phone app to control the light bulb, how long does it take? So if you can optimize that, and if you can make latency lower and can really make very smooth experience, I think that can make your IoT solution stand apart from other companies. So I think that is one trend we can see. Another trend, again, I think from user experience perspective, when you do the data transfer, say for example, we have surveillance applications where you transport video streams or otherwise data. Say for example, your photo files or your video files. Now, can you optimize this transfer of the information in such a manner, that you can optimize overall time? I think that is the main focus there. And if you look at today applications, they don't use bandwidth optimally. For example, the bandwidth available may be 2 Mbps, but application may not be able to use it because of several constraints, maybe even from the protocol perspective. So can you optimize, at that layer further so that you can get much better transfer time and you can utilize the bandwidth very effectively? So I think from connectivity perspective, some of these trends.
So I'd like you to, in the next round of questions, just, both of you all help us understand how IoT is different than just all the smart devices anyway that we're touching, right? What is the characteristics of IoT? I think you started to touch on a few of those. That would be great. So I'd like the way you all sat, at the chip level, a little bit solution, and now go up the stack to the app layer. So, Krishnan, where do you all, you're a startup that's in the IoT space, but you don't actually build a piece of hardware, right? So why are you on this panel as an IoT startup?
Good question, this thing. Should I walk away? Yeah, so I think actually Ajay and Viren have kind of actually set the stage for me to take on. So Ajay was talking about the endpoint devices that are there in the machines. Viren was touching about actually the 4 layers that are there, which is the devices, the gateway where you kind of collect the data and push it in, about actually the connectivity that is required, and the end applications. Just wanted to actually throw a few things to you. These are our own customer stories. 1.25 million equipments, each one of those equipments generating actually data at a second level. 400 LNG carriers, these are liquid nitrogen gas carriers that go around in the sea. Each one of them producing about 900 readings every second. This is again actually another customer. Last week I was there in Paris talking to them about it. Now all of this have endpoint devices which are collecting it. All of this get transmitted to a central level, and then comes the application where somebody is supposed to actually go ahead and make sense out of this data. How do you make sense with this fire hose of data that is being thrown at you? That's where actually we come in. We come in the entire analytics space, which is what we call as actually the IoT intelligence space, where we try to go ahead and look at it in terms of making sense out of this data.
Got it. So you're more in industrial IoT, right?
Just to clarify, I am the grease person in this panel because both of them were giving a lot of examples on the B2C space where they are talking about consumers. We work with deep engineering companies and we work with actually complicated machines. Today, if you go ahead and look at it, we are talking about a smartphone, which is probably a couple of $100 worth of it. There are machines which are $1 million plus. So if I go back and actually look at a frac pump, which is probably $1.25 to $1.5 million, that is not smart. It's got certain amount of sensors with it, but it is not smart. You talk about actually those LNG carriers, the largest one being 4 kilometers, floating LNG wharfs that are there, largest being actually 4 kilometers in length. They have sensors, but they are not smart. So it's a question in terms of we focus on those areas which are more in the industrial space. Thankfully, GE is the one actually who took the initiative and actually started off the entire industrial internet revolution about 4 years back. And very, very happy that actually it has progressed. And even a company like ours is considered globally, and globally by actually Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 50 companies, to work with them and actually take it to the next levels.
Got it. So Viren, he's talking about $1 million devices, pieces of equipment that manufacture things in a factory, to which he's going to attach an IoT sensor and something that communicates. On the other end of the spectrum, there are people who are trying to put things in light bulbs, right? And it has to be a fraction of the cost of the light bulb, whatever you're putting in there. Can you talk about that end of the spectrum? Where's the price points going, and what kind of capabilities will we see at the very low end of the price point?
So I think if you look at one of the major cost part in IoT devices is the communication modules or networking interfaces. And there, of course, the challenge in networking is in IoT device to gateway, mostly if you look at from the network perspective, it may be the coverage, how much coverage do we want there in that, maybe within house or within the metro or across the countries. So there the optimization is further happening in reducing cost for these modules for all these different coverage areas. For example, now for cellular IoT, where we use cellular networks for connection, now some initiatives like we were talking about LoRa, similar initiatives like NB-IoT is being talked about, narrowband IoT. And one of the primary objective in narrowband IoT is to reduce the module cost. For example, right now, the cost may be between $10 to $15. And now in narrowband IoT, I think target cost is around $5. So bring it down to that level that in $5.
So for the benefit of the audience, when you say $5, what you're talking about is being able to attach a small PCB that has a radio on it, that has a communications module, that can talk directly into the cloud, that can upload and download data from that device. And attaching that costs you only $5.
$5.
Right? For any piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And that's going down further, right?
Yeah. So I think narrowband IoT will have some speed limitation because, of course, there are other variants of the in cellular networks which are already being worked out. For example, LTE-M or so there the cost may be slightly higher and the speed, the data transfer rate may be very high, maybe several megabits. But in case of narrowband IoT, maybe 200 kbps or 100 kbps, I think all that is feasible at that cost. So for many of the IoT applications, for example, smart metering or smart parking or logistics or asset tracking across cities, or I think it should be possible to use narrowband IoT.
And even when you add GPS to it, you could still get it in that price range almost, right? So maybe you should talk a little bit about that. You know, how are you all driving that down? And I know you have some angst also that the price points are going so low. You know, maybe you want to talk about that.
See, the small data collector edge devices, as he said, there are like classes of them. Mostly, currently, they are either Bluetooth, Bluetooth mesh, Wi-Fi, and he talks about narrowband cellular connectivity. Now, let me give you a certain perspective. $5 is a board, right? The LTM, which is essentially driven by Qualcomm, we have about 500 engineers, the best minds in communication technologies working on it. So you can imagine the R&D costs of developing that $5 module. We do the RF front ends for them, antennas for them. We don't do the PCBs. So the PCB guys have to make money. The end guys have to make the money. The question is, if we cannot amortize the cost of that development, right? Why are we in that business? Qualcomm will shut down essentially. Investors will not give you the benefit of the doubt. So narrowband cellular IoT will take some time to come into, not only because of these reasons, but also because of power performance reasons. The power is not there for standalone battery operated, coin cell battery operated designs. So the dumb edge devices, pretty much Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. The stack from a technology company perspective, platform perspective, the stack should, in terms of getting us the business, should look like the cheapest technology at the bottommost device, which is currently Bluetooth LE in terms of producing it. It's there. The software stacks are getting used all over the place. On top of it, the Wi-Fi, and then the cellular. But as soon as you get into that business and it gets basically becomes a business about on-the-shelf devices, people can take it off and build devices around it, and then he can build analytics around them. That business, essentially, if you take a look at the companies that do that business, their margins are not good. They are under pressure. They cannot innovate. If your margins are not good, you cannot innovate. Essentially, the problem is the guy who's sitting at that end, he would pretty soon ask you for more intelligent data to do better analytics, because otherwise his business model is going to get starved of intelligent data, right? And to give you an example of that, in the smartphone business, when you take a picture, to keep our costs down, we used to compress the data incoming from the sensor and keep it, which would not allow you to do the app that got released maybe 4 days back, which is Prisma, right? And I don't know how many of you guys have played around with it, but it is fantastic. You could not do editing of the photos because that Google, for Google to provide that API to you, the silicon provider has to keep that data in memory in the device so that they can pull it up. What essentially that means is you have more silicon area, more power, more performance on the device. Which is why I say the Internet of Things, the Internet is already there from our point of view. The technology is there. You can plug it in whichever place you want if your business model allows it. The smartness of the IoT is where we want to play in. That's where we will get the, and as far as, just one more point, the industrial IoT, I will give you an example of a company which is using a smartphone chip of ours to do what he's talking about. So they play in two different fields. If any one of you are diabetic, you would know that it takes 3 days to give your blood and get the results back. What they have done with our chip is that they have used a sensor, optical laser, basically to collect the data, push it into our chip, do machine learning on the fly, and now they have a box which essentially can sit in front of the doctor like a thermometer, and you will get clinically accurate readings in flat 3 minutes or less. That's smart IoT. Now you can, connectivity is there in that chip, you can get your results while you travel from the doctor's office back to your home through your phone. That's not a problem. Similarly, they are doing something with Shell, by Shell and all these guys, PG&E, are losing money because they can't meter at the home. So the third decimal place is costing them $1 billion a year. What essentially that means to us is, can you machine learn the flow of gas in a home and tell me how much of which gas is this guy using at this particular time? So those are the smart devices which will provide him the smart data to give you analytics.
Got it. So, we're going to, to the points you made earlier, we're going to see classes of devices, right? I mean, surely you have your smartphone that's, very fat at the edge,
Yep.
in some sense, has lots of intelligence, has a lot of local storage, but you can also see the very thin device that's dependent on cloud computing, from Flutura or whatever, to really add intelligence.
Right. All I'm saying is the big semiconductor suppliers which push the technology. So, take healthcare IoT, for example. What we are seeing is essentially services which are connecting you to your doctors or those kinds of services. It's not providing clinically accurate diagnostic data to the doctor, which these guys can work on and provide intelligent choices. For that, you need specific types of sensors to hook up into your body. That needs research, that needs sensors on the edge devices, which are not smartphones. Maybe smartphones, may not be smartphones. So that's where we are going with it.
Yeah. So in addition to miniaturization, in addition to cost being driven down, you also have sensor technology that is being innovated, right?
Yep.
And that is actually driving a lot of use cases. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, you've mentioned a few. You have some, Viren, that, where you see new sensors coming out and new use cases for sensors that are very different than in the past. I think camera technology itself we're seeing a lot with. Yeah.
I think he will play around with thermal sensors.
No, actually, I feel because currently the major use cases what I think we can see is smart home lighting,
Correct.
logistics, asset tracking, and health, e-health, etc. So from new sensor perspective, I don't see any.
All right.
Other
In
new
agriculture, you see a
innovative-
lot of new sensors coming out, to measure pH levels, this thing, that thing, various other things that we're seeing across the board that, that may have not been kind of prevalent before. But anyway, so, we'll open it up to the audience for questions. I think there are some mics that are going around. Can you get the mics out? We've got one question here already. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Patanjali from Wells Fargo. Just heard about multiple things, smart IoT, intelligent IoT. So we are essentially referring to cognitive IoT, means the machines which are connected to each other will connect to each other in the human brain, mimicking human brain, what human brain is thinking. So are they connecting like that? Are you referring a smart IoT in that manner, or it is something different? Or it is a human way of connection, human way of thought, and then connecting that, or it is just an intelligent way of arrangement of wires and sensors and all those things?
Yeah, so that's the beauty of the phrase Internet of Things, right? It's so broad. You want to take a crack at that, Krishna?
So, very, very interesting question. I need to actually admit that on this, but because it's also actually a certain amount of philosophy with which we are working at Flutura. The first, there are multiple levels of maturity through which things will need to go through. At the first level is where it gets connected and you have visibility. The next level is, think about it in terms of actually, let me draw parallels actually and go ahead and look at it from a doctor perspective. You go to a cardiac surgeon, and if something comes and tells you, or some machine actually comes and tells you, Tomorrow you take up this particular person for a surgery. Will you do it? You won't. So first is information where the particular person needs to be provided certain amount of information to take the right decision. So that's one level of maturity, which is where connecting can help, and then you can take it to the next level. So whatever Ajay was talking about in terms of actually sensors everywhere, connected, bring that visibility. The next level that comes in from a sophistication angle is, there is a series of data that is coming in from it, and it's a fire hose. The doctor cannot actually take a look at it. So he needs assistance in going ahead and doing it. That's where actually our things come in. For example, we have certain things called episode detection algorithms, highly patented, and these, from the stream of data that is coming in, will identify those episodes. And when those episodes are put in a particular sequence, it can talk about actually a potential adverse situation. What you start getting now is certain things called intervention indicators. You don't need to be worried about the 1.25 million equipments that I talked about. You now need to be worried about actually those equipments which are likely to fall down. So this is the next level in terms of this, where you are getting into certain amount of prediction, certain amount of identification in terms of potential faults, and these are expensive. For example, if in my case, one of my customers, if the equipment 24/7 the equipment runs, if the equipment is down for an hour, we are talking about $300,000. So if you are able to go ahead and look at it on being able to identify that, you save a lot of money. Now comes the next level of maturity, which is where it is no longer one equipment that you are looking at. It's a set of interconnected subsystems that need to work together. How are you able to go ahead and make sure saying that actually they connect with each other and the interdependence is also modeled? So this is the third level of maturity. See, we are talking actually with some of our customers, massive business use cases. I'm not talking about actually intellectual stuff out here. Massive business use cases where if you get to know that actually my machine has broken down, there is nothing that you can do about it. If you get to know 15 minutes ahead that my machine is breaking down, still you cannot do anything about it. But if you have enough instrumentation, and if you know that actually the machine is likely to break down a week in advance, spares can be made available, no breakdown maintenance, it can actually be a planned shutdown. So many things can be done in terms of this. So it's a question of that latency and how you look at it in terms of being able to manage that part. And again, just quick one more point and I'll stop, which is Ajay was talking about it in terms of actually the smartness of the edge device. So we work, for example, actually we are one of the preferred partners with Dell and preferred partners with Intel. Both of them, while on one side we are looking at it in terms of making the chips cheaper enough to be able to go ahead and actually embed itself in a B2C use case. The other side where we are looking at is, we are looking at actually much more capacity at the edge. So Cerebra today is actually, Cerebra is my platform. So Cerebra today is actually, has the central layer and it is also integrated and certified at the edge layer. A lot of data, it doesn't even need to come to the center. We will harness or harvest the use cases at the edge, at the center, push the decision making down to the edge. Millisecond decisions, it can never be on a cloud. It will need to actually happen at the edge level, and it happens at the edge. Long answer.
So we got one question.
So a couple of questions. One is around, when you're talking about having intelligence at the edge device, right? So while all of this is happening at the edge device, you need some of this to also go back for the larger community of your devices to gather that learning and then propagate that, right? So the question around that is, how would you ensure that such massive amounts of data and the learning from millions of connected devices are actually not interfering with each other, right? Because the intelligence I'm getting from that one device is actually specific to that system, whereas my other systems might be massively different from each other. And coming to the second question around that is, what is then the standardization? So would you have to then have chips or devices that are customized to the specific use case that they are going to be utilized for? Or is there a possibility of some standardization that can take place to have, the same type of chip being used across multiple use
Great.
cases?
So, two good questions there. The whole M to M, each machine is making its own decisions. It has its own algorithms there. In a room like this, if we have a whole bunch of robots running around doing all kinds of things, all coming from different manufacturers, each making its own decision. I think you're starting to see a little bit of that in autonomic cars as well. If, two cars have to make a decision that, and one has to crash into the other or something, which one does what and how do they make decisions in a coordinated way? How do you coordinate, right? That's one. And then I think the whole orchestration of protocols and interoperability, right? Is there a good set of standards emerging there?
So I think I'll try to answer that question. I think what he was talking about, that some computing or some intelligence need to be there in the edge devices. I think that definitely is one requirement because looking at, internet connectivity situation, you would always like, some decisions and some analytics also to be made at the edge. But as far as I think aggregation of the data and then analytics is concerned, I think when we are building the applications, we'll have to be conscious of the context and the type of devices as well and what kind of data we are getting. So when we are building, say, AI application or machine learning application, I think from where the data is coming, what kind of device, what is the context, I think that will have to be factored in. So I think it will have to be taken into account at the application level, any interpretation of data. I think there are some standardization effort to standardize semantics, but we are not sure, how much it may be successful. For example, what does it mean, light bulb on or light bulb off? So different applications also should be able to understand it in same manner. So that may be very difficult to achieve. I feel that's why in IoT, maybe like for example in telecom OSS and BSS, where we manage so many complex networks, system integration plays very important role. I feel in IoT also later on in complex installations and customization and system integration or system integrators may play a very important role. So they may have to look at that, what is the application, what is the requirement, and then customize and the application or develop the application.
Even in smart home, we're still seeing lots of fragmentation there, right? In terms of protocols, it's a pretty much of an alphabet soup of acronyms, standards, all of that, right? Across the board. So I think this is a reflection of the nascent nature of the industry at this point, or is it just competitive advantage that's causing this fragmentation?
So I think my assessment on this is that I think standardizing and interoperability may be very difficult to achieve in future.
Very difficult.
May be difficult to achieve because, say, every company will also try to position their solutions better than other companies' solution. Like we were discussing about user experience.
Right.
So if I can make my solution for a smart home much better in terms of user experience or in terms of any other aspects, for example, we were talking about latency and other, then I would like to capture the market, from
Right.
differentiation point of view.
Yep.
So maybe I feel that integrators may play a very important role in IoT in future.
Maybe some middleware players that come in. Yeah, we'll take one more question. I think there was a question there.
Hi, my name is Ashish. The question is more related to IIoT, Industrial Internet of Things, related to the edge devices in particular. See, I come from an industry where we make products for mining and oil and gas verticals. The challenge we face is in terms of packaging these devices to be compatible to the harsh environment in which they operate. So you're talking about reducing the cost of the device, However, what we would like to understand is the efforts in terms of making the devices itself more rugged and compatible to those environments in which they operate. Because the entire cost of putting them together, being there right at the equipment itself is a multiple of the cost of the device itself.
Yeah. So how resilient are these devices? How rugged are they? Especially in Indian environment, maybe where it's quite a harsh environment sometimes, right? Dust, power, whatever, pilferage, all kinds of.
They are pretty rugged, but since the industrial IoT sales cycles are much longer or similar to automotive, it's difficult to make specific devices to conform to specific, vertical segments. So it's okay if the industrial devices are inside a factory, it's fine. Humidity is controlled, temperatures are controlled, everything is fine. But we are, for example, we are all of us make automotive chips with much broader range of environmental conditions imposed on the chips. If the market becomes big enough for the industrial IoT where the environment, either in terms of temperature or humidity or their ranges, or in terms of, let's say, in a semiconductor manufacturing facility in terms of radiation, we will do that. I mean, those are not the problems that are not technically solved. They are essentially about a business case. Do we have a business case to spend the money?
Last question, and there's one in the audience.
Hi, this is Gauri Shankar from ARIS. I have a question related to the security aspects of the IoT-enabled systems, especially the smart homes. Is smart home the safe home in future?
Can you repeat the last part?
Security aspects
Yes,
of the
sure.
IoT systems, especially the smart homes.
Sure. So, how much security is built in this little $5 device that you may be sticking on something that may be acquiring a lot of personal data or even access to back-end systems, right?
So I cannot comment on that question because he asked that is a smartphone a safe phone? I think I'm not very sure on that. But as far as IoT devices are concerned, I think a lot of work is going on in security For example, because in case of IoT networks, it is always possible, that you can insert a device which is not a valid device, or from malicious intention also you can put a device in the network. So I think, for example, some protocols like PANA, that Personal Area Network Authentication EAP protocols. So these kind of security mechanisms today are being implemented, and they will be part of the chip module. So when you take the protocol stack, it will come along with the this kind of security built in, where you will be able to authenticate the device. So it may be zero configuration, auto discovery, and instant authentication. And that every time when device also wants to do something in the network, you can do the access control for each and every action type. So you will also be able to define that. So I think security is one big area in IoT where a lot of work already is going on. It's already being built into the chips.
And it mimics a lot of the other endpoint security that's being built anyway, right? So some closing comments from you all.
Thank you.
On terms of IoT in India is in particular. What is the opportunity, do you think, across India and, in different industries for those that may be in the audience from various different kinds of sectors?
So to me, actually, I'm surprised saying this, but this is reality as far as we are concerned. We work in Houston, we work in Central Europe, we work in Japan, and we work in India. The leading thoughts and jumpstart to innovation is happening with a lot of customers out of India. It may or may not be actually Indian companies. For example, actually there is a textile manufacturer out of Switzerland which is taking the lead, but they are going ahead and actually doing it in India, probably because they believe that this is the market actually which is adopting it faster and moving things forward. One of the largest hydraulic equipment manufacturers based out of Netherlands, a Danish company, Dutch company, they are experimenting and doing the pilot of India and pilot in India and taking it forward. So I find it actually very, very rosy that a lot of things are, the entire innovation is actually spawning off from India and then going ahead and actually taking it to the world.
Very good, Viren.
I will say, I think from India market perspective, I will say that IoT space, I think there is a big space for innovation from all perspectives. For example, just to give an example, I think in India still internet connectivity is a problem. See, Huawei, my company has R&D center in Whitefield, and there are so many IT companies in Whitefield. But there also internet connectivity today is not assured. So I think in that case, for example, we were talking about intelligence at the edge or in the homes and home storage and home analytics systems. So there is a lot of scope for innovation for Indian conditions where solutions which have been developed in some of the developed markets may not be suitable. And we can optimize much better on that.
I think we, in the Indian IoT market, we need to start to, the Indian guys, Indian ecosystem must start to think slightly differently from the developed market, because the usage of the edge devices to provide data analytics may be completely different, right? So I can think of a couple of companies who I kind of work with off and on in Mumbai. They work in supply chain management for consumer good companies. Distribution network in India for consumer goods is essentially contracted out, right? So asset tracking, as you were saying, is extremely important for Procter & Gamble, Hindustan Lever. They lose 30% of their margins in the distribution network. That problem is kind of non-existent in the US. That's a big chunk of the market. Now you have, Patanjali as well. So its market is big there, especially for, analytics guys. Healthcare is very important market in India. I think I'm not too sure what Practo's business model going forward would be, but diagnostics at the edge is kind of imperative for India, right? You cannot bring business models which will create hospitals in, we don't get them out 50 kilometers out of Bangalore, so there's no point in running around with that business model. IoT will help that. So instead of focusing on Fitbit kind of devices, more on devices which give you diagnostic data. So there is a lot, so those are two very interesting examples of where the India market may grow differently. And you can have multiple business models on top of it, which will also drive technological even innovations for companies like us, right? Sensor technologies for diagnostics are completely different from, for example, VR, which is the big thing currently. So that's where we should, I think, focus on as a market.
Great. And, in closing comment for me is just, the last couple of weeks I've met with a couple of teams on the two ends of the spectrum. And, Reliance is putting out the Geo network. And, I could get, for instance, 90 megabit downloads, right, on my phone. And on the other end, I met with the Tata team that's sending up these 50 byte payloads on the LoRa network. And that's going to be 300 rupees for the whole year for a device to transmit, n times a day, right? And so it's amazing. Those two fabrics are being put out simultaneously on both ends of the spectrum. And it's going to be very interesting times for anybody building IoT devices in our ecosystem, I think. So thank you very much, all three of you. A round of applause for them, please. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.